Steppenwolf's hometown was Los Angeles, which also produced our next classic band of the late 60s, a band described as hypnotic. Organist Ray Manzarek remembered how they picked their group name, The Doors.
Well, it's hard to say exactly where it came from. A lot of people say it came from the Aldous Huxley Doors of Perception. But it goes further back than that. William Blake said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, man would see things as they truly are, infinite. So that's where the doors really comes from. But the doors, it was a common phrase. Jesus said, I am the door. It's just a common psychedelic metaphor.
Ray recalled the origin of the Doors' first #1 record, Light My Fire.
That was a pretty communal song. Robbie Krieger, the guitar player, came in with most of the basic idea for the song. Jim added some lyrics, some additional lyrics, and John Densmore, the drummer, gave it that kind of Latin-esque kind of beat that it has at the beginning, and I put on the keyboard parts, and all that stuff.
The Doors and Light My Fire, a song that was later a hit for Jose Feliciano. Again, the Doors organist, Ray Manzarek.
Most of the Doors songs had a communal thing about it. Somebody would come in with a basic idea, Robbie would come in with some chord changes, or Jim would come in with some lyrics and a kind of a basic melody line, and then all four of us would get together and put the communal brain to work on it, and the songs would evolve out of all four guys putting their input into the song.
Ray offered an example.
Hello, I Love You was written for a black girl that Jim and I saw walking down the beach. We were sitting on the beach talking about getting the band together and all the stuff you have to do. And here came this dusky jewel. The line that Jim says in there is, do you hope to pluck this dusky jewel? And she was a black girl, the dusky, dark complexion, dark skin, and she was just a little jewel walking by. And we both looked at her and said, wow, that's a real cutie there. Look at that one. And Jim went home that night and wrote a song about just walking up to a girl that you didn't know or anything and saying, hello, I love you.
Next on the history of rock and roll. The history of rock and roll continues with the Doors and Hello, I Love You from 1968. The Doors' lead singer, Jim Morrison, was admired by many performers, including Grace Slick of the Jefferson Airplane.
The last time I saw Morrison, he'd taken about every drug anybody handed him, and he was so crazy that it'd get him off stage. He was just leaping around like a nut. He's a real good singer and a fantastic performer. I really liked him. I liked him even when he was going crazy. I watched him. He just leaped around the stage. It was great entertainment.
Once again, Ray Manzarek.
Well, it wasn't that Jim was rowdy on the stage. What Jim was the shaman. What Jim was is a classic musical tradition of a man releasing the control of his conscious mind and letting his subconscious take over and becoming one with the flow of the rhythm in the music. Jim wasn't just some kind of crazy freak jumping around up there. First of all, the guy was a brilliant poet. The man was just a genius poet, and if you ever get into his lyrics, you'll begin to understand something about real poetic genius. But he also had the talent of going on stage and forgetting he was Jim Morrison. There was no Jim Morrison on stage. There was some guy, something that came out of his primeval past, something that came out of his unconscious mind took over. It was like Jim's conscious mind short-circuited. It just clicked off, and there was nothing up there except this mad whirling dervish just dancing and singing to the music that John and Robbie and I played.
In the spring of 1971, the Doors met in Los Angeles to cut their final LP together.
The recording session, that last album, L.A. Woman, was recorded in our Doors rehearsal studio. We had a small place on the corner of La Cienega and Santa Monica where we used to rehearse and take care of business upstairs. And it came time to go into the studio, and we've been working on the songs, and we all said, hey, wait a minute, let's not go in a studio. Why don't we bring the studio here? Let's just bring a 16-track machine, put it upstairs, get some battery power or whatever we have to do, and run a bunch of mic cables and stick the mics downstairs and record right in our own rehearsal room. Because we'd gotten tired of the studio. We were starting to get somehow, it was 6 or 7 albums, I don't know what it was, and just get tired of the studio, and we wanted to have some kind of spontaneous kind of feel. So, sure enough, L.A. Woman and Riders on the Storm and Love Her Madly and all those songs all came out of our rehearsal studio.
Love Her Madly from The Doors, 1971. Ray talked about the songs of Jim Morrison.
They were all facets of his personality. He'd never write anything that was false to him. Everything that he ever wrote was a part of him. He wasn't necessarily a happy person, necessarily a moody person or maudlin person. He had those sides of his personality, various facets of Jim Morrison, and everything he wrote came right out of his soul. Riders on the Storm is the last song that Jim Morrison ever sang. That was the last one we completed, the last one he did vocals for, the last song on the album, and about a week after he finished his vocals on that song, he split for Paris and said, hey, listen, I'm going to go to Paris. You guys finish up the mixes and everything. And we said, okay, man, see you later. Go have a good time and, stay in touch. And whenever you're ready to come back after your vacation or whatever, come on back and, we'll take it from there. And that was the last I ever saw of Jim Morrison.
Rock critics label the Doors as boy next door types, if you happen to live next door to a penitentiary or lunatic asylum. Theirs was a mystical kind of music, a reflection of their mysterious leader, Jim Morrison. To this day, doctors can't explain why Jim Morrison's heart suddenly stopped beating on July 3rd, 1971. The other Doors tried to continue, but with little success.
It was all wrong, The Doors was four people. And without Jim, it was impossible to be the Doors. We needed him. The three of us could still make the music, but somehow the whole lyrical, vocal thing just wasn't right without Jim. We tried to do it ourselves, but it never really felt right to us. And so we did 2 albums and said, hey, that's, this is ridiculous. Let's just take a pass.